Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to another Survivor BC Season 7 deep dive. And this is going to be the deepest of the dives. With me is Taylor again. Taylor, how are you doing?
Hello.
Hey,
I'm
it's good to.
just as good as I was half an hour ago. I have coffee now, though, so that's a plus.
Oh, nice. I am done with coffee. I'm just on the water still, so, but let's introduce the man of the hour, the winner of Survivor BC Season 7 Tribulation, Luke.
Hey
Welcome.
y'all, how you doing? I'm really excited to be on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me. And it's going to be a spicy podcast. I'm going to lay it all on the line. No mercy for anybody.
Ooh, I'm very excited. Luke, let's get right into it, man. Were you recruited for this because are a returnee?
Yes, I was actually recruited for this season. I was originally supposed to play on a 24-person cast with a lot of Americans and just a few returning players, such as myself. I'm not sure who the other couple of people were, but yeah, I was always recruited for this season.
Awesome. Did you hesitate at all, or were you like, I'm in right away?
Oh, I was all in all the way. Like, I was very scarred from my last season, and it's been 3 years, and I think about it a lot. So I really wanted another chance to kind of redeem myself.
Can you explain to the viewers who have not watched BC Season 4 your experience in your first game?
Okay, so my experience in my first game was still an awesome one. Don't get me wrong, but so many things went wrong for me. And it all started out fine. I got into a strong alliance of 4, and then the merge hit. And then I saved one of my allies, Devin, from going home. And then he left me out of all the votes. And then we got to the final 4, and then my closest ally kicked me out. So really, realistically, nothing went well for me after the merge.
Kind of an opposite story from this game.
Yes, exactly. Here, every single round, I got what I wanted every single round. It was a really easy game for me.
Well, come on. If you could go back in time, wouldn't you want to win some of those rewards?
Oh, no. I threw every single reward in the history of both seasons that I've played. I did not want any of them. No way.
What? Wait a second. Okay. Maybe we are finally going to figure out how to bottle up Luke's strategy. This is my goal. By the end of this podcast, all of us will be able to replicate Luke's strategy. So, one of your goals you're saying is to throw any reward.
Yeah, so I would always throw any reward challenge as well as in a swap. If my alliance needed me to throw, I would throw in a swap as well. But those are the only 2 times that I would throw a challenge.
Wow.
Why throw reward challenges?
Yeah.
Because there's no benefit to winning a reward challenge, especially a reward challenge like touchy subjects. You do not want to win that. That is like a death sentence to win that almost. So I definitely did not want that one, especially.
What about like the team rewards, like early on in the game?
A team
'Cause
reward.
that's like,
I mean, I'm country boy LJ, okay? I don't need a lot of food. I really don't care that there's like Pizza Hut on the line. Like that to me doesn't matter at all. When I'm actually watching the CBS Survivor, I actually skip past all the rewards because I'm just not interested. That's the one part. And the family visit. Not to sound like I'm a bad person or anything, but I always skip that too.
wow.
What? This is crazy. So Luke, it's like emotionless when you play the game. It's like I don't need food. I'm not going to
Yeah,
get hungry. I don't need
exactly.
feelings.
As Devin, my good friend Devin, described it, walking corpse. That's exactly
Country
it.
boy LJ.
Devin was I don't know if he was one of your biggest fans, but he was definitely one of your biggest critics throughout the whole
Yes.
game.
Yeah.
Sounds
I
like
know. I
Devin.
think he was one of my biggest critics, but honestly, I love that guy. He's one of my really good friends, and yeah, he calls it like he sees it. And me and Devin we just think completely different. We're completely different players, and kind of like me and Knight, like we are polar opposites in every single way, and we're never really going to get along in the game. That's just how it is.
So let's get right into your game then. Like you talked about throwing the strategies. You went to a lot of tribal councils before merge. Let's get right into that first one. Let's talk about, let's get into day zero and you're meeting your tribe and seeing who's on your team. Talk about who you're bonding with and what's going down.
So on night zero, I was actually bonding with every single person except Knight. I don't think I spoke a single word to him. And I didn't realize that till a couple days after. And I'm like, wait, I haven't even like interacted with him once. But every other person I was getting along with pretty well. I think, was it Steven that made like a tally of who people wanted to work with on day zero? And I was almost on every single person's list.
Oh, wow. How did you guys determine that? Did you just like go to each player and ask them who they wanted to work with?
Yeah, so it was just like in a first confessional type thing, like who are you vibing with the best? Who do you not really get along with? Things like that. And then a tally was composed of those like very first confessionals.
So, Luke, you were set from the start, and one of the, I guess, best things to say is that you didn't muck it up. like,
Yeah, exactly. The whole goal for me was just not to make any mistakes. And yeah, it's not flashy. And from an audience perspective, it's probably the most boring game you can ever watch. So I don't blame the audience, okay? That was a very boring game, but it works.
There you go, it worked.
it works. I mean, you're the first. It's funny too. You're the winner of the season, and you're also the first person who went to the island of Patmos. Um, I can you kind of refresh my memory? It's been a while.
Yeah.
What happened at that?
So the other tribe decided to send me first. I'm not sure why. Maybe they thought that I needed it, or maybe they wanted to put a target on my back, because I know Knight was telling me after the merge that I was always the target when it came to the merge time. Like the Theatera tribe was always going to vote me at the merge. So maybe they wanted to paint a bigger target on my back. So that's what I thought it could be. And then I went to the island of Patmos, and you have 3 envelopes and you get to choose one. And of course, I picked the one with a challenge advantage. And then they asked me, like, are you going to share this with your tribe? And I'm like, of course I'm going to share it with my tribe. Why am I going to lie about something that's happening in like Final 5 or whenever? Like, this has no benefit to lie about it. And the next person that goes to the island of Patmos is just going to rat me out anyway. So obviously I was going to tell them the truth no matter what.
And so what was that again? You won a reveal of what the final 5 challenge was?
Yes. So I had a Final 5 description of what it was going to be. We didn't know it'd be 5. We could have thought it would have been 4 or 6, but we knew it was an end game challenge, and we knew exactly what it was. So everybody knew the order of the 10 items in the Final 5 challenge from the Pink Boys. We all knew what we had to do. It was just the poster board section, which unfortunately I didn't do that great in. I didn't figure out the technique that everybody else was using. I was trying to do it old school, which didn't work in that scenario for sure.
I saw some weird techniques during that challenge. Like
Yeah,
Tyler had me rolling on the ground laughing while he's like skating across the grass. And I'm like,
it
that's
seems like everybody was trying to do something except me. I'm just putting my one piece in front of the other, in front of the other, and then everybody else was doing some really wacky stuff, and I didn't bother to look, I guess.
so funny.
But you're saying basically you helped all the Pink Boys with that information. So I'm assuming Knight did not have that information.
Yeah, Knight was the only person at that point who didn't know what the challenge was going to be, and he didn't know what to do. So that definitely helped. Stevie told me after he won that that was a huge help for him. So I'm glad it paid off.
Yeah, for sure. That's some of that survivor luck and mojo you need at the start of the game to set you up right. Um, so then you guys do you want to talk about your tribe and maybe like getting towards that first TC and how the dynamics are starting to shake out?
Sure. So my tribe, I actually really liked my tribe. There was a couple people on the other tribe, which I guess we can get into later, that I also wanted to work with. But I was really happy with my tribe originally. I knew I had Tyler there, who everybody thinks we had like some sort of pre-game alliance, but I haven't talked to the guy for 2 years prior. So it was kind of refreshing to see him there. I knew he'd be a bigger target than me. I knew I was the second biggest target on the tribe, but I knew that he would take the brunt of the first vote if we had to go to a tribal council, which we did, because we're a pretty bad tribe. Let's be honest. I think one of the worst tribes I've ever seen. I don't know how we got split up like that, but before we went on to the season, we had a questionnaire describing your talents and your strengths. And of course, I'm pretty cocky. I'm pretty arrogant. I put like 5 for everything. So that might have not helped for the tribe split. I think I carried myself a little too highly than I should have. Maybe I should have put like a 3 or a 4 for some of the abilities. But I put 5 for pretty much everything except gross food eating. So yeah, that probably hurt us. Going back to relationships with everybody, I really like Stevie off the bat. Like me and him just clicked right away. So I knew I wanted to work with Stevie. I knew Tyler and we viewed the game exactly the same way. Believe it or not, me and Tyler in person were kind of the same person. Maybe he's a little more into philosophy than I am. But other than that, we're very similar people in real life. So that definitely helps. We view the game exactly the same. So we kind of clicked like right away. And yeah, we were making fun of people that talked about game theory and voting blocks and stuff like that. So we got along relatively well from the start. So that was refreshing. And other than that, I liked Matt as well. Matt was one of my closest people there as well. The other 3, I was kind of like 50-50 on. I didn't really have any strong initial feelings, but those 3 people were my closest people from the start.
I think it's so funny you talk about being cocky and arrogant, and I swear I never saw that until the final tribal council. And I think being able to like tone that down has to be a huge part of your game.
Yes. So the strategy that I was using for that part is in my real life job, I am a customer service manager. So I deal with complaints for 8 hours a day. It's not a fun time. I often find myself having to be very fake individual to pretty much everybody. And so when I entered the game, I was customer service Luke. I wasn't really being my authentic self. I was just being this guy that I knew would work because I'm good at my job and I know how to make people happy and whatever it takes. And so using that strategy really helps me get away from my regular frat boy self, which probably would have got voted out first. So I really needed to change who I was in order to adapt to the game.
That's so interesting because we hear so often people want to be their authentic self. Um, but there is something to be said about having multiple authentic selves. Your work vibe is a little bit different than your home vibe. So that's a really interesting strategy to kind of you're bringing out your professional side, and it turns out that that side is able to deal with the bullshit.
Yeah, that side is better suited for Survivor, without a doubt. If I brought my frat boy self into the game, I'm not going to last very long. I'm like a Tyler, but I wouldn't be able to pull it off. So it would have not been well for me.
So, what was your take? The next tribal council, you guys actually, that was your one time you won before the merge. And Jeff gets voted out, whom you were aware of because you worked production on season 5. Did you think, were you a little bit worried that suddenly like returnees are going to get voted out? Did that change up your game, or were you like, I'm kind of glad one is gone? That's going to be less heat on me. What was your take?
So my take on the Jeff vote was actually kind of neutral because both me and Tyler wanted him out right away. Unfortunately, we thought he was just a little too schemy for us. So we would have voted him out if we had the chance anyway. So it's kind of a relief that he got voted out in terms of him being a returning player. I actually thought coming into this game that I would have had like a bigger target on my back and that I would have gone home either first or second just because I was a returning player. It's really easy for the 5 new people to just gang up on the 2 returners. You can even split votes. You have the numbers. They've already had their chance to play, so we haven't. So why not vote them out? It's such an easy argument to make. Not very interesting either, but they definitely could have done that, and it was always on my mind that I could have been out that way. So I really wanted to focus on making connections, not just with Tyler, but with the other people in my tribe to make sure that didn't happen to me.
Did you know about Kevin's idol at all? Did anybody know about it?
Everybody knew about Kevin's idol because as
Oh
soon
yeah.
as he got back, he told all of us, which I think is the right move to make for sure, because we were thinking about targeting Kevin actually. So him telling us that he had the idol basically got the target off his back and put it onto somebody's like Dylan, because Dylan was the other option we were thinking about as well. So Kevin having the idol and telling us about it is a good move on Kevin's part for sure.
So what went wrong there? What went wrong with Kevin just totally getting super paranoid, playing his idol like
Okay, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but Kevin is an Orger. Okay,
oh,
don't get me
I didn't know
wrong.
that.
Yes, he played a lot of orgs. It's his first live game. Generally, people that play orgs, they don't do very well on their first live game. It's just a different skill set. Look, I'm not gonna roast orgs too much because I played orgs too. I was an Orger. Okay, but Orgers, in order to win orgs, you have to be a game bot. That's your best move. If you're a game bot, you usually can win orgs. But if you're a game bot, you have a really, really hard time winning live games. That it does not translate. Completely different set of skills. And he was just really getting used to the live game aspect. And he got really paranoid and just did everything wrong that he could have. Every single person, even Matt, who was getting voted out that round, told him, don't use the idol, at least save these boys. Like, they'll have a better shot at a swap or a merge. But he did it anyway, and I think that's just a casualty of being a first-time player in a live game. So I know he wouldn't make the same mistake again, so I'm glad at least it was a learning experience for him. And I think he's going to do a lot better his next time.
Yeah, that was super frustrating to watch too, like, even from a production standpoint, because I was doing that confessional with him where he's like, "I gotta use it, I gotta use it." I'm like, "Use it on Matt." Like, I just in my head, like, "Are you using it on Matt?" Like, "Oh my god, this is a good move." And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be using it on myself. I just don't believe that it's not me." And I'm like, "Why? Why?" I'm so confused because like it just seems so obvious that it was Matt. It did, and I do agree with the people come into live games from orgs and forget that they're dealing with real humans in front of you. Like you can see them, you can see their emotions and everything. And there's that distance with orgs that make it a lot easier to be a game bot and a lot easier to control your paranoia and stuff. But when you're stuck in a live game and that's all you have to worry about, it's different. So
Yeah, I completely agree with that. No, that's such a good point that, you have to deal with people's emotions. You can't just be a game bot. And that's what a lot of orgers and first time LRG players fail to notice. Like, you have to take into account people's emotions. Like, what I'm doing at the start of the game, I'm pretty much vibing. Like, I'm straight vibing. I'm sitting in
yeah,
camp, hanging out, getting to know people. I'm not running around looking for idols or doing
no,
crazy shit or trying to start alliances. I'm just getting along with people, like talking to them, being a human. Even though I wasn't completely authentic, my connections were still pretty genuine to people.
mhm.
Just the way I played wasn't very authentic.
You talked at the end, Luke, a lot about not respecting idols, playing old school. Um, so were you even out there looking for BC bucks like everybody else, or were you just like, you go do it? I don't want to do anything.
I did go and look for BC bucks because everybody else did. So obviously I'm not going to be the only one at camp sitting by myself while everybody talks about voting me out. So clearly, me and Tyler actually handled this really well. Like, obviously we didn't pregame or anything, but we knew we wanted to work with each other because we thought of the game the same way. So 3 people split up, and then another 3 people or 2 people went the other way. So Tyler went one way and I went the other way. So always one of us was always within ear's distance of every single person that played the game. And we did that the entire pre-merge. We handled it very well. Tyler had to go to the bathroom. I'm sticking with the group all the time. And then he would come back and then I would go to the bathroom. We didn't even have to talk about it. We just thought this was a good idea and we always handled it really well. So we always had info of what everybody was thinking. And when it came down to voting someone off, and people split up for the BC bucks, we always were in every conversation, at least one of us, and we'd report back to each other. It was really helpful to have somebody like Tyler there for sure.
To be able to compare stories, that definitely must have helped you because then you can kind of tell where if somebody's lying. Because
Yeah.
if you heard two different stories. So let's do a hypothetical, Luke. Let's say Kevin plays his idol on Matthew and is correct. Tyler goes home that round. Do you think you can still win the game without Tyler?
I needed Tyler in that scenario. I don't think I would have won. I might have made it to final two, but I don't think I would have won in that scenario. I needed Tyler at that point.
Yeah, he definitely. We'll get to that when we get to final tribal. Interesting. Um, so then we get you. We kind of talked about it. I mean, we've talked about it in a lot of podcasts. You know, Kevin kind of sealed his own deal, sealed his fate for the next tribal council. Um, it'd be interesting that had you guys won that immunity, I wonder what kind of shakeup would have happened at Merge had Kevin been there. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, we actually talked about that quite a lot, us Pink Boys, the four of us. We talked about like how things would have been different if Kevin stayed. Because Kevin, like, it's his first time playing. I don't think he was going to ride or die with the four of us. So I think he would have flipped over to the other side and we would have had an entirely different game. So it's actually to my advantage that he did misplay the idol. I think I would have had a harder path if he didn't. I don't think he would have stuck with us. And I think I would have had to not stick with the Pink Boys as well if that was the case, because we weren't a tight group if that was the case.
Yeah, that would have been such an interesting dynamic because, like, I would still see Aiden and Andrew flipping over to you guys, but then Kevin trying to flip over to the other side, thinking that Aiden and Andrew are with the other side, and then obviously a first blow up tribal, and then his idol probably gets exposed by everyone, and oh god, I'm just like in a rabbit hole of thoughts right now. If I was
I
game
know,
with my
right?
dad.
I'm imagining chaos Kevin, like chaos cast, like how fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of thought of him the same way too, like a cast with his
yeah.
idol. Like, you never know what he's gonna do, and that's really scary for me. You know, me, I
Mhm.
don't like idols, so if I can't predict what somebody's gonna do with it, they gotta go.
So, is there anything else you want to talk about the pre-merge, Luke? Any other stories or details, or do you want to get right into the juicy details?
I think one more thing we can talk about pre-merge is that, you know, it may not look like losing 9 out of 10 challenges is a good thing, but it does bond you way closer together. Especially after every win that Thyatira had, they did this like really obnoxious chant, and we could hear it all the way from the other camp, and we were like, "Wow!" Like we just lost our like 9th challenge in a row, and you're gonna do that. Like it really made us mad, and it made us feel closer to one another. So I think that's a mistake on their part too. They should have not done that.
Yeah, that chant was so annoying. I can completely agree because and honestly, I think the same way, like, you wanna go to tribal council. I like going to tribal council. Like, it's part of the game,
I
and
do
it
too. I
bonds
never get
you.
votes. It's great.
I really do think that there is value in losing because, like, how are you supposed to trust these people that you're on a tribe with if you don't ever have a point of, seeing if you can, so
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You can't see where the lines are unless you've actually voted. You can talk all
Mhm.
you want, but in the end of the day, it's the vote that matters. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that for sure.
That's very true. Watching season 5, the first couple episodes, I was very shocked because we didn't go to tribals. I was like, "Oh, that's what was really happening here." So that's true. So I don't know what advice listeners you can take from that, but
Lose every
sometimes,
challenge.
yeah, like maybe you do want to lose. Survivor's such a strange game, but yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I also want to tie it back in because Tyler's on your tribe, and again, Tyler has the history of losing more challenges, I think,
Yes,
than anybody
you
else, right?
have.
Mhm.
So I think you were just screwed. I don't think there was anything you could do single-handedly to necessarily save that.
Yeah, despite my obnoxious 5 out of 5 self-ranking, I don't think I could have done anything. As soon as I saw my tribe, I was like, yeah, we're going to go to tribal council a lot. And I knew we were going to lose a lot of challenges, but not necessarily a bad thing. In the case for me, it's a good thing.
Mhm.
Stevie definitely wanted some pizza, it looks
Yeah,
like.
I felt bad for some people. They were really struggling. I wanted the pizza for Stevie. I didn't really want it for myself. But yeah, other than that, I didn't want the pizza.
So let's get into the merge. Let's get right to it. The good stuff. So we were talking about um, the vote might have been night, it sounds like, for the merge.
Yeah, so originally, actually, from day one, I was targeting Knight. Tyler was targeting Knight. We were telling everybody that Knight's the biggest threat. Like, he has to go. He's going to target either me or Tyler, which was the case. And we wanted him gone for sure. Not Tyler, but Knight reminded me of Devin from last season, but not a Devin I could work with. Like a game bot, somebody who talks about, game theory and voting blocks and doing whatever it takes to win. Like, as soon as I saw Knight, I could think that his mind was always working. Like, he was always scheming. He was always thinking of something. And like me and a player like that, we just don't vibe because I'm a very chill person. I'm hanging out at camp. He's always strategizing. He's always trying to make some big move. And I couldn't be handled with that. So I definitely did not want him as a teammate. I wanted to get rid of him as soon as I could. And I was pretty much targeting him the whole game. We couldn't target him because he kept winning immunity, which in itself is a very bad thing. When you win the first 2 immunities, that puts an even bigger target on your back. So now it's like this game bot who can win challenges. And he just had such a huge target on his back. But he had to have won that first one. Otherwise, he would have been gone. So at the end of the day, it's still to his benefit to win that challenge. But yeah, unfortunately, it just makes him a bigger target.
Yeah, I argue that like he honestly needed both of them because it gave him like the time to, like let other things happen and let other people make targets of themselves. I think like right off the bat, he was just a target in everybody's eyes. And so like he needed a little bit of time where they couldn't touch him. Um, but yeah, that's the thing is that you can't make yourself a target that early on, or else you're just going to be, you put yourself in that position. And so I agree, though, him and Devin are so alike. And it's
They
funny
are.
because they're actually really good friends.
Yeah, so
They
I
both
found
play
out.
poker. Like, so I totally see the connection.
Yeah. They do have a hard time winning a live game, though. I think that style of play, like, yeah, it's big, it's flashy, but if you make like big moves at final 9, final 8, you're never gonna make it to the end. You're just gonna get booted immediately after. So I'm looking forward to seeing them play again, but I want them to play like a little bit differently. I think they have to, and if they actually want to win.
Can you guys remind me what placement Devin was in last season?
So Devin was 6th.
Okay. I'm having difficulty placing the face on him. So I don't.
I can pull it up on my phone.
I was like, not super memorable for me, but I'm sure. I mean, I've watched a lot of Survivor BC in the
Didn't
last
he
year.
like do a circus or something, Luke? Like he had some
Yeah.
like
So I saved him at the Merge Tribal Council. He was going home, but I talked to Austin and Garrett and a couple other people, and we saved Devin. Yeah, we saved that guy. My
no,
my
I
friend
thought you were talking about season 6.
oh
Oh
no.
No.
he's-
Oh yeah.
4.
Yeah. Devin. Yeah. Duh. Sorry. My bad, everybody. I know Devin.
I
yeah.
was like, he was on Pride.
And then
But yeah.
after that Merge Tribal Council in season 4, then Devin did a whole Devin circus, which is another huge move by Devin, but you're not supposed to make these big moves at final 9. Like, it's way too early. Like, come on.
Can you? I don't know what the Devon Circus is. Can we just go there for a second?
Devin circus was the craziest 20 minutes of my entire life. Like, he had everybody, like, everybody was about to go poop themselves. I'm not even kidding. He made everybody so paranoid. Everybody was running around like a chicken with their heads cut off. And he was whispering to every single person. And of course, he had the immunity necklace, which I think was the only reason he could have even attempted something like that. Otherwise, people would have voted him out. So he used that to his advantage, and he made everybody feel like they were going home. And got somebody to play their idol, which I kind of made a mistake in telling Austin to play his idol too. We should have kept it. But he did a lot of things, put a big target on his back, and ultimately got voted out. So in the end, it wasn't really worth it because I was always team Devin. I was wanting to take Devin to the end. And it was my fault. Me and him were talking because I didn't really report to him every round. That's something I did a lot differently this time I played. I reported to all my allies, all 3 pink boys, every single round, every little detail that I knew I would share with everybody. I didn't do that in season 4, so Devin had a hard time trusting me, and ultimately that's why he made Devin Circus. But had he not made Devin Circus, Pink Boys would have gotten to the end with my plan, and Devin could have actually won that season, so ultimately it did hurt him.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make about like how he had immunity and he like wanted to do something with it. Because I always find that like when players feel the safest, that's when they make mistakes and they try to make a move. And they get power hungry basically because they're safe. And so it's definitely a common mistake that I see people, but they let the power get to their heads.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And another takeaway that Luke's telling us is like the consistency. And we can clearly see that in your first game versus your second game, even though you played well your first time too. But if we want to bottle something up and take it away, it's like being consistent, talk to your allies, make sure you're on the same page, or at least they know who you've talked to, what you've been talking about, what lies you've told. Those things could impact your game positively.
For sure. The mistake that I made in season 4 was in the swap, we solidified a final 4. And I thought, that was my first time playing a live game, that was good to the end. So I didn't necessarily bother reconfirming with them every round. I didn't think it was a necessary thing to do, but it definitely is. So for anybody that's trying to play their first live game, reconvene with your allies, talk to them every single round. It's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I just assumed that they would see me trying to flip other people on the other tribe and would assume that I'm still with them, which I was. And I managed to flip some people to my side, but they thought I was actually aligning with the other tribe instead of them. So you definitely need to talk to your allies every single round. That's a given. You have to do that.
It plays into the whole paranoia thing too. Like people need reassurance, like constant affirmation, like I'm with you, to ease those nerves and the paranoia that like you're always thinking in your head, like what's going on. So I agree 100%.
And just to tie this back to an earlier part of our conversation, the difference between orgs and LRGs. And I played an LRG way before I ever played an org. And like I would always tell players this, like paranoia is so real in real life because I'm going to watch Luke walk over and talk to Taylor and I have no idea what he's saying. Whereas in an org, if you privately message somebody and you're talking about me, I don't care. Like I don't know anything about it. Like I don't see that. But when you see the dynamics happening, you're like, I can't talk to everybody at once. But yeah, in an org, you can spam chat your whole tribe in 3 seconds. So
Yeah.
it's a whole different demon to try to conquer.
Yes, it is.
So we just went on a total tangent. Where are we?
Okay, so the Mitch vote, like we started talking about night winning immunity basically and him needing it.
So at this part of the game, what's interesting is like it's almost like you have a choice to keep going with Tyler. Tyler can try to take the reins and take the power kind of from you and keep moving forward with you. What's your perspective in these kind of like next 3 votes that we're going to get through, which is the Mitch, Aiden, and Andrew?
So despite what the viewers crave for some juicy gossip, I really just wanted to stick with the Pink Boys, and I knew that we had a very tight 4 and that we could ultimately dismantle them. Obviously, Tyler knowing some people on the other side definitely helped us, but I think we would have been okay either way, actually. I had a really good relationship with Andrew, starting to talk to Aiden a bit. And we could have worked something out with them. I think they were always people that, despite knowing Tyler, wanted to make a big move and wanted to flip. And we would have used that to our advantage for sure. So those votes were very crucial for us because if even one Pink Boy goes home, the entire game shifts completely. We would have had to not go on a free-for-all. I would have always had Stevie's and Dylan's back, but if Tyler got voted out at that point, we would have had to do some major shifting of alliances. We would have had to become a lot closer with Thyatira. Maybe me and Keenan would have worked a lot closer because I always had a good relationship with him and I knew he liked me as well. So a lot of things would have been different. So those were the most important votes by far. And they set us up for success down the road.
Yeah, it was super close. Like you could have lost Tyler in the Mitchell vote out. You could, I mean, it would have been tricky, but Dylan, I mean, a lot of stuff would have had to shift, but Dylan got the second most votes at this. And those are two pink boys, two people you need. And Tyler's one of them that votes for Dylan. I mean, what's that takeaway when one of your alliance members votes for one of your other alliance members? Did
Okay.
you?
Yeah,
I want to
I
hear
have a
about
lot
this.
to say about that. So Tyler pulled me aside right after that vote, and he's like, "I'm sorry, man. I voted for Dylan." And I'm like, "What are you doing, man? Like, are you kidding me, bro? Like, we talked about not pulling a Kevin for like the last 2 days, and you do exactly that." I was frustrated with him, but ultimately, I knew that I had to keep the Pink Boys together. So I had to do damage control. I had to make sure Dylan was okay with Tyler. Tyler was okay with Dylan. And then Tyler, for some reason, was like, like, I'm really sorry. If you do decide to like vote my boys out, don't tell me. And I'm like, not a problem. I was going to vote them out anyway now. I'm not going to tell you a thing. And yeah, they had to go at that point. I wanted them gone. I wanted Tyler all to myself because, I'm greedy like that. I need Tyler all to myself. I don't want to share. I don't want to share a Tyler. For some reason, people think Tyler is like this great villain and they always try to vote him out. But Tyler's like one of the most loyal people I've ever met. Like he always stays with his group. He always votes with his people. He's a great ally to have. I don't know why people are always trying to target him. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I say that it's because people always have this perception of Tyler as a villain and like a really strong game player that forces him to play loyal to the people that give him a chance. So that's why he's so loyal, is because there's not a lot of people that are open to working with Tyler. But
That
when
is
they do open that path, he's of course going to be loyal to you because nobody else wants to work with him. So I think that's why like he comes across as very loyal in games.
Yeah, that's a benefit of working with Tyler for sure. Like he doesn't have a lot of options. So if you work with him, he's going to be loyal to you. So people watching in the future, if you ever get a chance to play with Tyler, go and take the opportunity. You won't regret it.
But start early.
Start
with
early.
That's true.
He's locked in, and you're going to get voted out instantly.
Luke, before we move forward with the other tribal councils, I want to talk about something we noticed. I think Devin brought this up during our breakdown that I wanted to touch base with you and maybe some hosts, if you watch this in the future, you could comment on this. You had less confessionals than many of the other players. And I do think naturally that kind of keeps you at camp longer. And so I've kind of called this the Luke strategy, even if it wasn't intentional, because I think it could help a player to not do long confessionals or keep your confessional short, get back to camp. And I know production probably hates that. They're like, we want to make an episode out of this. But at the same time, it's your game to lose or win. So what's your takeaway from that? Did you notice that at all in the game? Like,
so that's actually a misconception right there. That's completely false. So I had fewer live stream confessionals. However, I had many video confessionals as well. Ultimately, our confessionals were pretty equal across the board for everybody. There's a couple people like Keenan who obviously had a lot more confessionals. But other than that, we were pretty equal. So there was no advantage of me having like 3 confessionals and then everybody else having 8. And me getting to sit at camp longer and bond with other people. Everybody had to do a confessional, at least 1 per round. If you wanted to do more, that's your choice. But obviously you shouldn't, even though it's good TV. It's not good for you, so don't do that. But yeah, we all had to do at least 1 confessional. So there was no advantage in that. In terms of keeping it short and keeping it like average length or keeping it long, my confessionals were pretty average. I didn't do long confessionals because then it makes your tribe feel like you're kind of thinking of a big move. Like when Kevin was gone for 30 minutes, we were like, oh no, what is Kevin doing? This is not good. And that definitely raised a lot of suspicion. So you don't want to keep your confessionals very long. But ultimately, I had some pretty average length confessionals. And yeah, most of them weren't live streamed. So that's why you didn't see it. But no, I didn't have an advantage in terms of extra time.
Yeah, Jira. So like there was my camera, obviously, like my phone. So all of those I tried to upload immediately. There's the live stream, but then there's also a video camera that Jira has. And so like when he would pull people initially, they were on that video camera, which you can't upload immediately. You have to like load it to a laptop and then like post it to the group. So like obviously there's no Wi-Fi out there or barely any. So yeah.
So, okay, so to break it down, this is not something that went down the confessionals. We're fairly even, but I still think there might be something to it. I don't know. If you need more time with your people at camp, keep your confessional short. I think that's the takeaway.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Like that's definitely a good thing to do. It's just that production isn't going to like you very much, and neither is the audience. But that's not a problem for me. No one likes me anyway. From an audience perspective.
Aww.
No, we just
like
your
thank you,
edit was a little bit purple, admittedly, on the live stream, but I think if
That's
this turned into if this was episodes, your edit would be completely different.
Oh, I know it's completely different because there's a lot of things that people just didn't get to see because I didn't have the live stream camera on me for the most part. Because, you know, with people like Tyler, with Keenan taking his clothes off, with Knight being an absolute stud muffin, like who's going to videotape me? I'm just the boring pink boy, right? So I didn't get a lot of live stream time, but I did get a lot of video time. So hopefully when the episodes come out, y'all are going to get a new perspective on this for sure.
And don't talk yourself down. You're kind of the muscles, right, of the season.
I mean, I thought I was, and then Andrew showed up and completely beat me up. So that was fun. Dragged across the field. I actually made the mistake of dieting down for the show, so I went from 175 to 150, and then of course in Steal the Bacon, yeah, I lost a lot of weight for the show. Looking good, I might add, but it's not very helpful for challenges like Steal the Bacon, where Andrew can literally fling me across the field. So yeah, he definitely had the muscle advantage there. I'm not the biggest guy by any means.
I almost wish I could. I had a little screen capture that I could show right now for those that didn't watch that moment. It was great.
Yes.
Well, there's your runner-up. Hi, Luke, our champion.
Oh, thank you, Dylan. Pink boy for life.
Yep, and we're kind of like after that Aiden vote where you basically saved Dylan. Dylan wasn't going to go home because you guys got Aiden out, and then you got Andrew out, and now you have Tyler without his alliance of people he knew from prior to the game. So I feel like that was a really good move for you, Luke, because you kind of just forced Tyler into a corner where he had to use you as his sole ally.
Yeah, at that point, Tyler had absolutely no one else, and he had to work with us. So that was always good. When it was me, Keenan, Knight, and Stevie the round before, when we voted out Andrew, Knight was like, okay, guys, like we have to do Tyler. And I'm like, I knew I wanted Andrew gone for sure, but I had to make Knight feel like, I was at least considering voting Tyler. So I'm like, okay, Knight, like I'm kind of 50-50 on this. However, I do think that Andrew can win challenges and Tyler is absolutely useless in challenges. So why don't we do Andrew first and then Tyler after? And he's like, okay, as long as you promise that those two are going in a row. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then Stevie had my back perfectly. Stevie played that around really well too. He's like, yeah, I would prefer Andrew because he's, like a huge physical threat. And then with the two of us preferring Andrew, Knight was like, okay, let's do Andrew, which was a bad move for him. His best case was Tyler going that round for sure. Andrew going was not a good move for him.
And for those of you that did not watch this live, this was the tribal council, am I correct, where you were split into two groups?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Luke was with Knight, Keenan, and Stevie. And so all your conversations just happened with those four prior to tribal, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's tough. That I would have, that's a rough tribal council. That's a good twist.
Yeah, luckily, it really worked out in our favor. Stevie, I got to throw it to him. He really talked well that round. He really convinced Knight. I brought up the idea, but ultimately Stevie did the convincing, and he did a really great job. So good job, Stevie.
Yeah, and that's a like point on getting too comfortable. Like saying, okay, like I'll let this happen, but you owe me something in return. And like that's the worst mistake in Survivor that you can make, is that like actually believing that somebody's gonna give you what you want around later.
Yeah,
And
I can't
so
believe that Knight actually thought we would get rid of Tyler next. Like, we were
yeah, no, I I don't know.
That's so true. It's like you don't know if there's going to be a later. You could be voted
Right.
out at that tribal. So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, you got to seize your opportunity right away in Survivor.
Mind you,
Uh,
he sorry,
oh yeah,
he
no,
was also, so the other person in that four was Keenan, right? So like I feel like Knight didn't have somebody like Luke or Stevie had each other. They're very strong personalities backing each other up, whereas Knight's kind of just like trying to convince them while Keenan's off in his own world. So like I also feel that worked in their advantage as well, is that Knight just didn't have anybody to logically back him up.
Yeah, I think if Knight had Jenny in that scenario, he would have had a little more convincing power. Me and Stevie weren't going to budge, though, at that point.
No. Yeah.
so then Knight wins his challenge, the hotel challenge, the touchy subjects. And then who did he bring again? I've heard it a million times, but I keep forgetting.
He brought Stevie and he brought Tyler as well. I didn't want to go on the reward because I don't care about rewards.
Did you ask not to go?
Me and Tyler, like we didn't talk about it, but we knew we weren't going to pick each other for awards, and that was kind of like an unsaid thing. And I don't think I would have picked the Pink Boys if I accidentally did win. Like if I had to win a reward, I would have not picked them either. It's just not very good.
So Stevie has a good point about Tyler, because there was some genuine distrust and upsetness at Tyler's choices that he was making. So it made the Andrew ploy more believable. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does actually. That's a good point there, Stevie. Knight actually thought that we were very, very frustrated with Tyler for lying to us, and we did play that out really well. Like when we were talking to Dylan, we were like, I can't believe Tyler would have done that. When we were talking to Knight and Jenny, we were like, I can't believe this guy. Like, I'm so frustrated with him. I just want to vote him out. And so they did actually think that we were considering Tyler to a great degree.
Which
So
is so funny to me, because like you guys played it completely well. Like I agree, but like from their point of view, like okay, Andrew's gone, Aiden's gone. Now why would you be pissed at Tyler anymore? Like his friends are out, so now he's just Tyler, your friend, the one that you wanted to work with. So it's like I just didn't get the logic of why they.
I didn't get that either. I'm like, okay, well now we have Tyler all to ourselves. Surely they can do that. But
So of course I can trust Tyler again. Like what?
That's so true. I like to think when you burn a bridge in Survivor, it's burnt. It's burnt. It's gone. You can swim over, but it's going to be a lot more work.
yeah, so that's something I did differently from my first season as well. Is in that season, once somebody burned a bridge, I considered that bridge permanently burned down. But you have to be very fluid, and you have to ultimately forgive if it's to your benefit. So me forgiving some people like Tyler for that mistake, which I didn't really understood why it was a big deal in the first place. Like he could have told us on day one, and it would have been okay. I would have at least, like worked with him and maybe not tried to target Andrew and Aiden. But the fact that he hid it from us, everybody was pissed. Everybody wanted Tyler out, but I'm like, no, we have to stick together, us four. Don't pull a Kevin. We can still do this. We can go all the way to the four. Nobody flip. And ultimately, we managed to forgive Tyler, and that's what we needed to do.
Do you think that's going to be a phrase in BC future? Like, don't pull a Kevin.
Yeah, it's going to be there forever. Sorry, Kevin. You've made history.
He's immortal now. Like, you're immortalized in this series, dude. So there's something.
The legend lives on. People may forget
there
about
we go.
Kevin. They're not going to forget.
Nope. So then we get to a round in Survivor that can take out so many people. The final seven, it can be really tough. Final 7 and 6 can be really tough for players. And you were successful, even though there were two idols that the opposing side had. Like, I keep thinking for this round, I keep going back to heroes versus villains, poverty having two idols, and they have four people on their side that could be targeted. And she was able to pull it off. And I just keep wondering, like, what Keenan and Jenny were really thinking. But let's get your perspective from this whole round, Luke.
Okay, so our side, the Pink Boys, we knew that they had those two idols. Stevie saw Jenny pick up an idol and get one from the market. And then we also knew that Keenan had the idol because Keenan told Tyler about it. And Keenan made the mistake, too, of trying to make a final two with me, but then not telling me about the idol. But then I knew from Tyler that he had the idol. So immediately I'm like, Keenan, come on, buddy. Yeah, I know you have it. But of course, I didn't tell him I knew about it. So they had no idea that we both knew about their two idols. So we really used that to our advantage. That was a crucial round for us. We had to keep all of our lies straight. We had to lie to several people. We had to convince Keenan that he was getting votes. So I came up to Keenan and I'm like, the other Pink Boys are going to vote for you. I don't want to vote for you because we got that final two deal. And then it made him paranoid. It started paranoia. He actually thought that he was getting at least 3 votes. So that's what got the ball rolling. And as soon as you can instill paranoia from the start and you let it boil up over time, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And eventually he did actually play that idol, which is a huge move for us. If he keeps the idol, we could be in trouble for future rounds for sure. So we had to instill paranoia. Everybody that talked to Keenan was like, you're getting votes, man, you're getting votes. And we talked to Jenny and we're like, yeah, Keenan's probably going to get votes. I don't know if she told him, but she said she was going to. So I'm kind of curious if she did that or not. But either way, we got him paranoid enough to the point where he was going to play it no matter what. And then when it came down to Jenny, she wasn't sure if people saw her. She thought that Stevie saw her, but she didn't know that all of us knew about it. And we wanted that idol gone. And of course, if you're playing with me in the game, and if I think you have an idol, you're going to go home. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. I don't like idols. I don't want to play with idols. People made a joke that because somebody actually in our pre-merge tribe threw the idol clue in the garbage, and they're like, oh, it must have been you, clearly, because you hate idols. But it wasn't me. I actually have no idea who threw it in the garbage. But I find it funny that, of course, my tribe ends up being the tribe that throws the idol clue in the trash. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah. No, that was a perfect round of manipulation. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, had I found it, may I have thrown it in the trash? Perhaps. Perhaps I might have. But we really don't know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, that was a perfect round of manipulation. Like, you guys played it so well. You had Keenan convinced, and like, I don't know what got to them or what, but like, if you take a step back, it seems simple. Like, Jenny has an idol. Why would they be so obvious about voting Keenan when they know Keenan has an idol too? Like, it just didn't make sense when you take a step back. But like, when you're in the game, you don't take that step back, and you can't like look at it from another perspective because you're always just constantly thinking and trying to believe people and trust people. But I don't know. That's why it was so tough to watch. But you managed to get out 2 idols in 1 round, and you had majority.
Yeah. So like you were saying, though, what we tried to do from the merge, the Pink Boys, we knew we had to cause a lot of chaos. We had to be the chaos cast. I'm not really a fan of hers, but I knew I had to at least stir chaos in some ways in order to get our group together and to get the other side to make mistakes. And that round, they made a lot of mistakes that round. We just had so many lies spinning, and we kept every story straight to the point where they had no idea what was happening. And that's why Jenny didn't play her idol, because she had no idea it was coming.
And from talking to Jenny, it does sound like, in her defense, she kind of wanted to work with Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to work with Jenny too. But the problem is that she ultimately probably knew it wasn't going to happen because she aligned with Knight. Like, Jenny has huge winning potential. If you're watching this, Jenny, you can win this game, but you cannot align with Knight. Do not align with a game bot. You have to align with a normal person who's straight vibing. Maybe me, maybe somebody like Stevie. Good allies for you, maybe even an Andrew. Do not align with a game bot because, firstly, the game bot will cut you always because you're going to be a huge threat to win, and they're not going to take you to the end. So never enter into a final two with a game bot. Just find a normal human being, someone that's actually just there to chill out and hang out, and take them to the end, and you will win. Like, she's a very good player.
She's so bubbly. Her personality is so fun. I loved speaking with her. But can we do another? I love hypotheticals if you haven't already realized. So let's say Keenan doesn't waste his idol, but Jenny still gets voted out with her idol and he still has his. And let's say Keenan, all the votes stay the same. It probably wouldn't had he had the idol, I understand. But let's say they stay the same and Keenan plays his. So in that universe, Knight, Keenan, and Steve, all votes are canceled out, right? So all 6 votes. And the new rules of Survivor that we've seen is that you would just go revote. And so then the vote would have been you, Dylan, or Tyler. Who gets eliminated at final 6 in that scenario?
So me, Stevie, and Tyler would have voted for Dylan. And I think the other votes would have been on me or Tyler. Either me or Tyler, I think. So it would have been a tie again, and then we could have actually gone to rocks, I think. That's a really interesting hypothetical. Would have gone to rocks.
I think it would have been Tyler, actually, because, like, there would have been nothing protecting him at that point. Like, it's just a revote. You don't have any powers or anything at that point, and, like, you knew that Knight's and Tyler's rift was still there, so I think they would have went Tyler in that situation. But could you imagine? Would you go to rocks?
Yes, I would always have gone to rocks for the Pink Boys. I knew Stevie always would have gone to rocks for me as well. I would have gone to rocks for him any day of the week. Same with Tyler. Even for Dylan, love you, Dylan. I would have went to rocks for you as well.
Oh,
so, yeah. We would have gone to rocks for each other. So the 3 of us would have gone to rocks, and I don't know if the other group would have. That's actually a curious question I have to them. Maybe they would have flipped on their own. But at that point,
I think it would have mattered because the vote was between one of the Pink Boys anyway, so they would have been like, whatever.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, I guess they.
So then, but that would be the scenario if they voted Tyler and you guys voted Dylan, then you would have been rocked out. You would have been the only option.
You're right.
Yeah, you're actually right about that. I didn't think about that.
Oh my God, this is what happened on the show.
Yeah, I think it was Siri that went home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Interesting. Luckily, that didn't happen.
And for those of you that don't know Survivor lingo, I don't know why you're watching. Maybe you're somebody's mom or grandma, but saying you'll go to rocks for someone means like it's so meaningful. Like going to rocks is like so heartfelt. It means that's your bro, that's your buddy, that's somebody you want to roll with forever. So
it's like you're willing to risk your game for them.
Yes, absolutely. So. Like I will lose for you.
Yeah.
Kevin has a question in the chat. Since I'm surprised because he's an orger that he hasn't heard this, but maybe we use it more. Does anybody want to describe what a game bot is to Kevin? He says somebody that strictly plays with strategy.
Yeah, so I can describe that for Kevin. Good question. A game bot is somebody that only cares about strategy, is not really focused on making social connections, and is always thinking of the next big move, okay? He only thinks about the game, doesn't really think about how other people feel on the tribe, always thinks about game and game only, and it's just frustrating to play with those people, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're the type of people that if they get to the end, they think that their resume is going to earn them the win, but forget the fact that you need to jury management and they're people and they're pissed that you've made all these moves against them. So yeah, very, very narrow-minded in strategy to a fault, I would say. It's a strategy, like it's a definitely a good way of playing. Like they're smart people, but like there's also other aspects to Survivor, and yeah.
And I think orgers sometimes come into the being a game bot means you're kind of absent of emotion, absent of the humanity of playing these games. And so I feel like sometimes orgers do come in with kind of that game body natural strategy. They want to lie, they want to deceive, they want to make big moves. And that's not always what you need to do. Like Luke was saying, creating the relationships at the start of the game, that's really what's going to propel you further on later on when your back is against the wall.
Yes, I think GameBot is a strategy that works relatively well for the first couple rounds, but eventually you will get voted out. So you do need to make those connections, and the best time to make connections is early on in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your end game, Luke. Like, I'm sure at like final 6, you're seeing, like, you can see the final 2 on the horizon. And I'm sure from your previous Survivor experience, you are bloodthirsty to sit in that seat. So how did you get to the final 2?
So I got to the final 2 by convincing everybody that they should take me. And ultimately, I had the relationships with everybody, and everybody was going to take me, which is really great. That's exactly what I wanted, even Knight. Knight was the person I was scared of the most. Props to you, man. You are a beast at this game, and you scared me from the moment I saw you. I wanted Knight out from day one, and I knew if anybody was going to vote me out, it would be Knight. So each time Knight came to me and he's like, man, you got to make moves, bro. Like, you got to build up your resume. And I'm like, you're absolutely right, Knight. Like I have no idea what to do. I feel like a goat, Knight. Like, I have no chance at winning. Like, what should I do, Knight? Won't you be my knight in shining armor and tell me how to win this game? Please, I'll do anything. And so Knight was like, okay, so what you have to do, you're on the bottom of the totem pole. There you have Tyler here, you have Stevie, and then you have Dylan. And you have to get rid of all of them. You got to go with me to the final 2. And I'm like, well, I'm thinking to myself, like, if I take this guy to the final 2, he's going to win. Like, it was his move. And he tried to convince me that it would be my move if I flipped. But ultimately, it was him that would have convinced me to take him to the end. And he would have took credit for that. So I saw there was never a point in the game ever that I was considering not voting out Knight. I always wanted Knight gone, despite what he thinks. I was never, ever going to take him to the final 2. I was never thinking about it. That round, the final 5, I think he spent over an hour trying to convince me that I should flip. And I was never thinking about it, not even for a second. And that was the longest hour of my entire life. I had to stand there for an hour. Of course, you might be like, Luke, why didn't you just tell him like you're in and you were going to flip? Because Dylan had told Knight that if I was in, then Dylan was in for sure. So it all came down to me. So Knight spent his entire time trying to like convince me to flip. It wasn't going to happen ever. But of course, I couldn't just say like, hey, I'm down to flip. Yeah, for sure, because it's not believable. If I spent my entire game riding out with the Pink Boys, and then as soon as Knight asks me one question, and in 30 seconds, he's convinced me to vote out my ally, it's not very believable. So I had to stand there and pretend like I was thinking it over for about an hour. And of course, at that point, everybody's looking at me like, wow, dude, like, is he actually convincing Luke? But no, that was never the case. I just had to make it seem like I was thinking about it because ultimately I didn't want Knight to vote me. I was scared of Knight the entire game. So props to him. He is very intimidating. Like, he is a strategic beast. He's good at challenges. I was scared of Knight. I did not want him to vote me. At that point, I didn't have a single vote cast against me, and the only person that could have ruined that was Knight at that point. So I had to convince him that I was on his side, or at least thinking about it. That way he wouldn't throw a vote on me. That way I have another thing to add to my resume for when I make it to the final 2. No votes cast against me. So it was always about not getting votes or not getting idled out by Knight. It was never about, oh, I'm thinking about going with Knight. That was not the case.
I have a question for either of you. Were there idols? Was the idol re-hidden at Final 5?
That's a good question. Maybe Taylor knows a little more about that.
So like the round where the 2 idols left the game, it was re-hidden, and that's how Knight found it. But that final 5 one from Patmos was never. It was only effective if he had made it. or whoever had chose it had made it to 5.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
so
and
it was
that was
never rehidden
so
or
that was
anything.
Keenan, right?
Yeah, it was just he got an idol, didn't have any power unless he made it to 5, and that would have been the only round he could have used it.
Did
Yeah.
everybody know it didn't have any power at 6?
Yes, so everybody
Yes.
knew,
Oh.
and Jenny actually got to list off the people that she wanted to go to Patmos first. And she put Keenan first, and he would have got the first opportunity to take the idol. So everybody knew that Keenan took it. And in Keenan's defense, it is the move at that point. It's your best bet to take the idol. So I'm glad that he did. It's a good move for him. But everybody knew about it, right?
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. It's a good move until you tell people that you took it, because this power becomes absolutely useless once people know about it. He could have just easily lied and said, "No, I didn't take it," because like we pulled people one at a time for the story time challenge, and like we went based off the order of Patmos too. So Keenan was first. He got pulled aside first. He just sat there for 5 minutes while we pretended to read him the story, and then he went off. And so like he easily could have lied about it and nobody would have known if he had taken it or not. So I think that was a mistake on his part.
that's a good point, Taylor. Yeah, he made the right move by taking it, but he should have not told everybody about it.
Yeah. It becomes useless at that point.
Yeah.
You're just basically asking for 6.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of fifth, which would have happened anyway.
Interesting. So, wow, this is so cool. So you finally get Knight out, Luke. You get your wish. Knight is out of the
Oh, I
game.
slept like a baby that night. I didn't have the guy scheming in front of me. Like you can tell, like we're sleeping and we're like right next to each other, and you can tell that he's like trying to come up with a way to like convince me or something. And I'm cringing the entire time. I'm like, this isn't gonna happen. So it's such a relief to have him gone. We slept like, so fine after we ripped up the flag. Of course, we wanted to rip up the flag first and put that night to bed.
Nice. So then, final 4, you made it back to your original placement.
Yeah,
And
a little
how
bit of a flashback there. I was kind of getting paranoid, like, oh, what if I'm fourth? And that would have been a disaster. No one wants to be fourth 2 seasons in a row. But fortunately, that didn't happen.
Fortunately, that did not happen, and you took out Tyler. What was their primary reason? Did you see Tyler as winning the game, or?
So unfortunately, I love Tyler. He's a really good friend of mine. We think alike. We're very similar in person. He will always be one of my greatest friends for sure. And I absolutely love Tyler. And it's really hard for me to write his name down, but I was always going to vote him out fourth. That was always the plan. I don't know why Stevie wanted Tyler out, because ultimately me and Stevie that round, we had the choice. We could have voted out Dylan or we could have voted out Tyler, because me and Stevie were always very, very close, closer than anybody. And we had the power. And I thought I would have had to convince Stevie more to vote out Tyler. But I'm like, hey, Stevie, I'm kind of 50-50 on this decision. What do you think, buddy? And then he's like, you know what? I'm leaning towards Tyler. And I'm like, yeah, me too. That's a good idea, Stevie. Let's do that. So I'm kind of glad he didn't object too much, because in his best interest, he should have got Dylan out, because then it's me, Stevie, and Tyler. And then, of course, we get rid of Tyler the next round. So it's me and Stevie in the final 2, and then Stevie wins. So in his best case scenario is for Dylan to go. So I'm kind of surprised that he was pushing for Tyler. But of course, that was best for me. It was always best for me to take out Tyler at 4. So I didn't complain at all. It seems like I always have such an easy time in these games, especially this season. Like I don't really have to do much; just the pieces fall into place for me, and that's great.
I'm sure it still wasn't easy after, playing with somebody like Stevie the entire game, creating such a close bond from the very beginning. And then you're the final 2 in the final immunity challenge, like fighting against your homie. You beat him, and
I did.
and you realized you weren't so emotionally invested that you knew you had to vote him out. And I'm kind of impressed with that decision.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it was always forming a tight alliance, pagonging the other tribe, and then taking out the biggest threats. That was always my strategy. And unfortunately, Stevie became one of the biggest threats. And originally, when we made our final two, I was always going to take Stevie to the end, no matter what. Me and him were super close. But then he started winning, and he almost set a Survivor BC immunity challenge record. Stevie is the alpha male of the season. He's a challenge beast. And he told me, like, he grew up watching people on TV doing these immunity challenges, the endurance one specifically. And he always dreamed of being that person who would beast out an endurance challenge. And so I'm very happy for Stevie that he got to live out his dream. I absolutely love Stevie, best person in the world. But at the same time, I was kind of sad because that means that I had to take him out, because you have this guy who's never camped in his life. It's his first live game. And he has this amazing story that would put everybody to tears, and every single person on that jury would vote for him. Maybe not if he was against Tyler. That would have been a really close matchup for sure. But everybody else, they would have been destroyed by Stevie. So, it's really sad for me to want to bring this guy to the end, which I always did. But then he became such a big threat. But at the same time, I'm happy for him because he's living his dream and he's winning these challenges that he always wanted to win. So I have very mixed emotions about that for sure.
There is no better feeling than winning an endurance comp. That's like literally like it's so overwhelming because like you, especially when you look at some of the people you're up against too, sometimes you seem like there's no way I could beat this person. They're like so strong and stuff, but it's all in your head. And like, I don't know, it's just such an amazing feeling to win an endurance comp.
Yeah, it is. Winning that last challenge felt absolutely amazing, especially since I was second place for so many challenges during the entire season, and actually, winning the most important one, that was a good feeling for sure. But I had to make that decision, and that was the toughest decision I've ever made in my life. But from a game perspective, it's a very easy one. Just emotionally, it was difficult for me. I had to put my emotions aside, actually stop being a quote unquote night goat, and actually make a move. So that's what I had.
You did what you had to do.
Yep, and prove you're not a game bot at the same time. So that's nice. I have a quick question for you, Luke, because you're a healthy, strong dude. When you were doing that challenge, it looked really uncomfortable. I do a lot of yoga and I work out, but was it physically uncomfortable, or was it?
The most uncomfortable I've ever been during any challenge. It's actually kind of a throwback to my Final Four on season 4, where you had to kind of do a planking position, but no part of your leg could touch the ground. And for me, those challenges are very difficult because I have just naturally really stocky, big legs. I skip leg day, but somehow I have these like huge legs for whatever reason, and they're massive. And it looks like I work out legs every day, several times a day, but I just don't. I just have these big legs. And for me, a challenge that requires me to lift my leg up above the ground is very, very painful, especially since I used to do a lot of bodybuilding, and bodybuilding is not focused on endurance. It's focused on repetitions. It's focused on looking good. It's not focused on doing the same position for an hour. Like, that is not something you're ever supposed to do. So combined with my naturally thick legs, that was a very difficult challenge. It was extremely painful. I was about to drop several times, but ultimately I had the willpower. I knew Stevie had the willpower too, and we beasted it out, and I couldn't have asked for a better competitor for sure.
Did you have any mantras or anything that was like rolling through your head as the pain came over you? Like,
yeah, I did. And it was Kirk went silent there for a sec.
Sorry about that.
I think you're back.
I'm just going through your head.
Yeah, so what was going through my head was the entire time I had a flashback to the Final Four in season 4, where I lost that challenge and then got voted out. So that was in my mind the entire time I was there, and I did not want that to happen again. For me, this season was about fixing all my previous mistakes, and to go down like that and get voted out at 3 to basically the same challenge, this one was a little more difficult, would have been very traumatizing. So I did not want that to happen. I was not going to give up no matter what, no matter how painful, which it was painful. The Final Four challenge was also very sadistic. Congrats to Nolan Easton for thinking up something like that. Very sadistic. Very painful. My skin is still peeling from that challenge. It's very uncomfortable.
Wow.
Hmm.
It's still peeling?
Yeah, my foot, the part where it had to go off the bench, the
Yeah.
skin peeled so much it's still peeling today, and it's been a couple weeks.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, see, this stuff is real, guys. Live reality games are, if you find the right series, they are no joke. They're legit.
Hmm.
Stevie is transitioning us into the final tribal council, epic final challenge battle, and well-deserved win. How did you win?
So I won by saying that I had a better game than Dylan. And in my mind, I knew some people in the jury were always going to look at resumes, even though I hate the word. Resume, I hate the word itself, but I still think you need to have points in your game in order to make you a worthy winner. So my focus was on proving that Dylan, yes, he made all these moves, but they all failed. And so I really wanted to draw out that point. So I'm like, okay, well, if you do consider resumes, which you kind of should if you're a juror to at least some degree, then would you put failures on your resume? And the answer is no, you would not put failures on your resume. So what does Dylan have? Dylan actually has less of a resume than me because my resume, like it's not long. It's the equivalent of a grade 10 maybe resume. It doesn't have a lot of points on it. Maybe I have, oh, I took out Stevie, one of the biggest targets in the game. And maybe that's it. Some people would say to me, like, yeah, that's your only move. To which point I would argue, okay, if you do think about me that way, what does Dylan have? And you can't think of a single thing that actually went really well the way he wanted it to go. So he has nothing on his resume. So even if you do consider resumes, I still have the better case to win.
So I was rewatching Final Tribal Council before I did we did Dylan's interview. And your opening speech, I think, is amazing. I think you really
Yeah.
sold it. When I was watching it, I was totally not in that same mind frame. I was like, "Oh, this is too cocky. There's no way Luke's going to win. He didn't play cocky the whole time." But it wasn't cocky. It came off actually with bravado when I watched it the second time, and you were just really owning everything you did in the game. And there is something to that. Whereas Dylan came across as a little bit more apologetic, and maybe too emotional.
Yeah, so that's something that my being a super fan, of course, I never use the term super fan, but I've watched every single series of Survivor, every YouTube series. I've watched other countries' Survivor too. I watched a lot of Survivor, and I know that you have to own your game. That's one of the most important things you can do in a final two scenario, and you can't be too apologetic because ultimately the jury knows what you did. They know that you screwed them over. So don't waste your time apologizing for it too much. Focus on what you've done and prove that you've done it well, and you'll gain the respect of the jury members that way.
And you clearly did. I'm still going to give Dylan some props. I'm still, happy that Dylan got 3 votes. I always love a good close finish in Survivor. There's nothing like it. When Gyro was reading the votes and it was 3-3, I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen. It was so exciting. I
Yeah.
bet you were shaking.
Not so much actually, because I knew that I would never ever get Knight's vote because I pretty much agreed when he told me that I was a goat. I'm like, you're absolutely right, Knight. I'm a complete goat. I have no chance to win this game. I knew that he wouldn't vote for me in the game. He wouldn't idle me out. But I also knew he would never vote for me in the final tribal council. So I knew I never had Knight's vote, and I knew I never had Jenny's vote. The other votes I thought I actually had. I thought it could have been either 4-3 or 5-2. Aiden was kind of 50-50, decided to go with Dylan, which I mean, I respected. Dylan played still a good game, even though he made mistakes. I still commend Dylan. He did a great job. And watch out for him next time. He's definitely not going to make the same mistake. He's going to play a lot better. He's going to have a better final two speech. And yeah, I always knew that at that point when it was 3-3 that I was going to win. So I was pretty excited. Even though I don't show it, I was probably customer service mode still, but that's okay.
I think you said something interesting that we can maybe expunge from this and take away. So when Knight was coming at you, you agreed with him. When Tyler was coming at Dylan, Dylan came at Tyler. He made it a confrontation. Not huge. I mean, I give Dylan props. He defended himself where he needed to defend himself. But you kind of just said, "Oh, okay, you're right. Go on." And
Yeah,
there
yeah.
might be something to that.
There is something to that. That's the whole customer service strategy where you can't tell the customer that they're wrong, right? Whatever they say, no matter how stupid it is, you say, yeah, you're absolutely right. And then the customer's like, wow, thank you. You actually are listening to me. And they're going to take it easier on you. And so that was my strategy in the game where if anybody would come at me, I would try to avoid confrontation at all costs and, make them feel like they actually made the right move.
And I also think like it allows you less of a chance to mess up because if you just agree and end the conversation there, like that's it. They can't keep drilling you. They'll probably just move on. And so, whereas if you battle it back, you're just allowing yourself more room to fuck up or say something that somebody else isn't gonna like.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So if you argue, then you better make sure all your points are very good because as a future lawyer myself, that's always what I've dreamed of doing. I know that if you argue, you always open up yourself to even more questioning and you make even more mistakes. So if you end the conversation right there, then you have less of a chance to screw up. That is true.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it, folks. That's how you win Survivor.
Period. That's it.
Not entertaining, but it gets the job done. It ain't much, but it's honest work.
So, Luke, are there any other memories, takeaways, advice you have for any future contestants, future hopefuls for Survivor BC?
Yeah, so if you're an Orger, you're probably going to lose your first live game, but that's okay. Learn as much as you can from it and come back and win your second live game. That's okay. Remember to always provide social connections and the ability for people to work with you if needed. Always make sure to not be a game bot. Make sure that you take into account people's feelings. Get to know people. Just be your authentic self. I was kind of a fake for most of my season, but the connections that I made are real and they always will be there. So make sure to be yourself. Make sure to form bonds early. The earlier, the better. People always wonder like, oh, how early is too early? Like on first day, should I make final twos? I would say, yeah, if you have the opportunity to make final twos on the first day, it's never too early, in my opinion. And you should go with your gut. Unless your gut says that you should waste your tribe's idol when they clearly need it, then don't do that.
Don't pull a Kevin.
Yeah,
Don't look at, it's okay, Luke. You don't like idols anyways.
Yeah, I hate idols, honestly.
You know?
That's why my favorite seasons are, like the first couple CBS seasons where there's no idols. There's nothing going on. Of course, the viewers rate it as one of the more boring ones, but I'm not your typical viewer. So
there you go.
To each their own. There's many ways to win Survivor. This is Luke's path. You just heard it direct from his mouth. And also, I gotta tell you, like Luke was part of production for season 5. And so I have a little bit of a connection with him because they did a preseason draft and Luke picked me on his draft. So there's this cool little connection we have. Did you pick Taylor?
I
Do you
don't
remember?
think so. Somebody else picked Taylor, but I know I picked Kirk. And the reason I actually picked Kirk was because I knew he would have succeeded in making social connections with people. He's not a game bot. He actually gets to know people, and that's the reason I picked him. And if you play like that in the game, you're going to have a good time for sure.
There you have it, folks. Survivor BC, our winner, has told us how to get to the end. And I hope that lots of you apply for season 8 whenever it happens down the road. You can find more information on their Facebook page, or I think they have an Instagram now as well. So it's been a pleasure, Taylor. This has been awesome. Thanks for taking so much time out of your days to do this. I love chatting with you. And Luke, you're so fun as well. You have such a unique perspective. And if you ever want to hop on one of these lives again to talk about anything Survivor, feel free, hit us up.
For sure. I love to. I love talking about Survivor. It's my passion, much like Jaira. I love Survivor to the bone. And one more thing, if Knight takes Keenan to final 2, Keenan wins, hands down. That's just the way it is. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this podcast.
That is the perfect way to end this because I'm sure there'll be more comments coming later on. Thanks, guys, for everything. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.